Another thing I really love about the GitHub client is how it really just sort of simplifies the whole process of uploading files to your remote directories and then downloading files from your remote directory. In Git, you're having to use either push, pull, fetch, clone. There are a lot of different terms, and it's not always obvious in terms of which one you should be using. So that's what's great about the GitHub client, because it just has that sync button. And in this exercise, we're going to take a look at how the sync button can also pull files from remote directories as well as uploading files, which is what we've been doing in the past couple exercises. So I am out on my GitHub repository. So go ahead and navigate out to GitHub, sign in if you need to, and navigate to the GitHub for Web Designers repository that we created when we first pushed this file up. You can see, since we've been doing a nice job of making sure that we're syncing everything as soon as we make a commit, that all of our files are up here, including the README file. So I'm going to click on the README file. And what I want to do is I'm going to edit this. Now, before I edit it, however, I'm going to go ahead and open up a text file. It's going to make my life a little bit easier. So I'm going to go out to my exercise files, chapter 4, and we're going to be looking at 0406. And there's a little text file here called link.txt. So I'm going to double click to open that up. That'll open it up in TextEdit or whatever your default text editor is. And all I'm going to do is double click everything there and copy it. So I'm going to go back into my README file and I'm going to click Edit. Now, we've done this before, so we know how this works. And on a line below the existing text, I'm just going to paste that in. So what is this? Well, the two hashtags there, or the octothorpes, if you will, indicate that this ought to be a heading 2. And then we're creating a link. So view the companion reference site will be the link. And then the information that is inside the parentheses will actually be the link itself. Now, we don't have that link yet because until we actually enable GitHub Pages in this repository, we won't be able to generate that link. So we're just putting a placeholder in for right now. We'll go back in later on and we'll fill that in. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and make a commit here. I'm going to commit the changes. I'm going to say update readme MD, and then down here for the description, I'm going to type in added a placeholder link for GitHub Pages. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and commit those changes, and we'll go back to the repository just to make sure that's been changed. Yep, says just now. Okay, I'm going to go back to the GitHub client, and I'm going to click on history because I want to be able to see kind of this coming in, and changes won't show that. Now, it's not going to update you every time your remote repository is updated. So it doesn't have that type of functionality. You're not going to get a little message that says, hey, this is newer on the remote. But that's one of the great things about this sync button. What it's going to do is it's going to examine your local repository and your remote repository, and it's going to determine which one has newer files. And then it's going to either do a fetch, a pull, a push, whatever it needs to do in order to make those two the same. So that's really great. And honestly, for about 80 to 90% of all of the file management that you'll need inside GitHub, that's all you're going to need. Now, I won't kid you, there are going to be some times when you're like, wow, I really need to do a fetch so that I can pull this down without actually committing it and, playing around with it a little bit. In those instances, of course, you're going to have to go out to the command line. But for simple operations like this, all you need to do is click sync branch, and it's going to bring in that change. So you'll notice in the history states, and this is why I was on the history pane here, that as soon as it came in, it says updated README. Now, that won't show up in changes because it really wasn't an uncommitted change. It was just a history or a commit snapshot that was downloaded from the remote repository. And that, of course, is going to update the README file locally as well. Okay, so that's a nice overview of the basic file management inside the GitHub client. In our next exercise, we're going to take a look at a slightly more complex set of operations in the GitHub client, and that would be working with branches.